Okay, so for this one we're going to do an exposed zip. This looks really good with a metal tooth zip, but we're just going to use a regular dress zip for this sample. So you need a dress zip that's about 25 centimeters long, and then a rectangle of calico cut on the grain, of course, about 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters. You also need a zipper foot as well. So to begin with, we're going to write on our fabric. We're going to label the right side and the wrong side. So we're just going to write RS for right side, RW for wrong side. And then we also need some interfacing, some iron-on interfacing. So we've got this one here, which is called Whisper Weft. In my opinion, this is the best type you can have. And what we need our Whisper Weft to be roughly the size of our zip. So I'm just going to cut that little bit off. And cut out my Whisper Weft roughly the size of my zip. I'll just move that off so I can cut down there now. So on the wrong side, oops, I just realised I labelled that wrong. That should be WS for wrong side. We're going to work out the middle. So I'm just going to fold it and finger press. Now I've got my fold there, and I'm going to place my iron-on Whisper Weft interfacing. So it's the rough side facing down, so the rough side is the glue side, along that fold, so it sits in the middle. So it needs to go all the way from the top, and it'll finish just a couple centimeters before the bottom. Now you can iron that in place. Okay, so I've ironed on my interfacing onto the other side. Now I just want to remark that middle point again. Finger press, and with the right side facing up, I'm going to draw a line along that fold. Okay, so you would use tailor's chalk for this, but for the sample I'm going to use lead pencil because it shows up better. The other thing I'm going to mark in is a centimetre from the top, which is our seam allowance. So my zip would be starting from here, coming down, because that will end up getting folded under, depending on the finish that's going to be along that edge. Next thing you have to do is you work out, okay, how long is my zip? So I know this is a 25 centimetre zip. I'm just going to double check. And I'm measuring that from the zipper teeth. It's actually a little bit longer than 25 centimetres. It's about 25 and a half. So from that point here, I'm going to roll down 25 and a half and mark that. Double check. What you want is you want that mark to sit below the metal teeth at the end of the zip. So it's got to sit here because we're going to be sewing at that point. We won't be able to sew on top of that. Next step is you're going to work out how much of your zip do you want visible when you stitch it. So if I put my zip under my ruler, from here to here is a centimetre, so there's about 3 millimeters showing on each side of the zip. For me, I think that's fine. You might want it a bit narrower so you only see the zip teeth. But for me, I'm going to have a little bit of that zip tape. So this is the zip tape showing. So what I then do is I'm going to transfer that 1 centimetre measurement so it sits evenly either side of that line. So I can mark that on the top. Oh, that's on the bottom, sorry. And on the top. And then I can rule those points together. I'm gonna go right down to my mark at the bottom there. I just want to make sure that spot at the bottom is square. So I'm going to use my ruler to square up. So that's my stitch line guideline that I'm going to stitch to help me work out how to do my gap, which is going to be here for my exposed zip. So if you're doing an exposed zip, you don't need a seam here. You can do it without a seam. Any other zip, you pretty much need to have a seam. Okay, so at the machine, I need a really small straight stitch. So I'm going to put it down to 1. And I've got my... Okay, so I've changed my straight stitch to a really small one, and I've got my guidelines here ruled up. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch along here with a really small straight stitch, turn my corner really accurately here and here, and go back up. So let's do that. Slow down so I can get right in that corner. Turn the corner. And again, use the hand wheel to get right in that corner. Might have to move my foot. Turn your corner and then go back up the other side. Finish with a reverse stitch, and before you continue on, just make sure you put your straight stitch back to 2.5. Okay, so what I've done here is I've stitched a guideline for the opening of the invisible zip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down that middle line now, and when I get to the bottom, I'm going to cut like a triangular shape into those corners. I'll show you now. So when I get to my triangle, I'm going to stop at the point, and then I'm going to just carefully snip into those corners without actually cutting my stitch line. Like that. And then I can go over to the ironing board. Okay, so I've got the right side facing here. Now I want to flip it so the wrong side is facing up. And I'm going to really carefully iron my opening open using the guidelines that I've stitched. Now we've got our interfacing there, which will help stabilize our fabric so we don't get any fraying. So I've done one side, now I can do the other side. We'll just be careful of the steam. So I've still got that little triangle part to do. So I'm actually going to stitch that on the machine instead of ironing it. So what's going to happen is my zip is going to sit, let me put it this way, underneath my gap here. And that mark will line up with just above the teeth. And then the bottom should sit just below the teeth as well. But I'm going to actually stitch this bit here. So what I need to do is I need to unfold this so it sits just below my my zip stopper here, and I have that triangle part sitting out, and I'll do that over at the machine now. Okay, so here I have the wrong side of my fabric facing up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it at that point. Just gently finger press it. And then what I'm going to do with my zip with the right side facing up, I'm going to slip that under. So that stitch line just sits below my zip stopper, and the point of my triangle sits in the middle, in the middle of my zip there. So I'm going to take that to the machine, carefully transfer it, might need to readjust slightly. And I'm going to stitch back and forth on that line I've already stitched. Just carefully toe tapping. And you're going to reverse on top of that stitch line. You created when you did your guideline stitch. Okay, so having a look here, that should have secured the bottom of my zip. So now what I can do is I can pop it with the right side facing out, fold in my edges, line them up neatly, So they're sitting in the same spot along my zip, and I can stitch these in place. I'm going to do a top stitch. I'm going to open that and just put one pin in place. So remember, I had a couple millimeters showing of the zipper tape. And if I have a look at that, pull it nice and straight and flat. That looks pretty good. I actually think I need a little bit more zipper tape showing. So I'm just going to bring it out a touch more. And pin it again. Alright, so to do this I need to change my presser foot. So drop that off. Now this is a normal zipper foot. Now what it does is it allows you to sew nice and close to the zip. So we need to use this side so that it sits here. So what that means is I'm going to click it into this side. Okay, so I can pop my zip under. I'm going to do the stitch really close to the fold. So I'm going to line up this edge with my fold. So you might need to use your tails at the back to get your material to move, because it is quite thick. Do the reverse stitch. Take pin out. And top stitch this in place, trying to keep the amount of zipper tape that is visible even along here. Now I'm just going to stop, put my needle in, put my presser foot up so I can get my zip head out the way. Tricky. And then I'm just going to come back here where the end of my zip is. And I'm going to be holding it from here from now on. So I'm going to hold it at the end, and then with this hand I'm just going to make sure that sits under where I've ironed it, and I've got an even amount of zipper tape showing. Put my foot down and keep going. Stop and adjust. Make sure that's folded in. And keep going. Just make sure that's folded out properly. Now you can see here I've kind of gone a bit narrow with my zipper tape here compared to here. So try not to do that. Try and keep it in even as you can. It's not the easiest zip finish. And when I get down here, I'm going to use my hand wheel to turn that corner. So my corner again, just making sure that is nice and even. And then nice and close to the fold, you can finish your stitch line all the way up to the end. Just stop and make sure it's going to meet. And what you can do here actually is we can get rid of that zipper head out the way. Pop our foot down again. Make sure our amount of zipper tape that we can see is even. And keep stitching. Okay, so that is our exposed zip sample finished. If you didn't want the zipper stopper showing, you could do that above it, and you can actually stitch over those plastic teeth. But you can see there, it looks pretty even. And it's a good finish to do if you don't want to put a seam in something. So if you don't want to put a seam here, you can do this finish.